My name is David, and for 5 years, my wife and I begged God for a child. We had everything: money, cars, a mansion in the best part of the city. But we had no child. At first, we thought it was just a delay. Then the years started passing. 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, still nothing. People whispered behind our backs. Family members dropped hints. Friends, even strangers, gave us advice. Hello, family. Welcome to Storytime Mutually. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel, leave a like for us, and also share this video to your friends and loved ones, and don't forget to turn on post notifications for more videos. Sit back, relax as we dive into the story. Try this herbal drink. It worked for my cousin. There's a powerful pastor in the next town. He performs miracles. Are you sure your wife is not the problem? Ada, my wife, was strong at first. She ignored them, but I saw the sadness in her eyes when no one was watching. I saw the way she avoided baby showers. How she forced a smile whenever someone announced their pregnancy. We went to hospitals. They found nothing wrong. We visited churches. God's time is the best, they said. We even tried traditional medicine. The ancestors will bless you soon, they promised. But no matter what we did, Ada never got pregnant. Until one day, she did. It happened when we had almost given up. Ada had stopped talking about babies. I had buried myself in work. We told ourselves, if it happens, it happens. Then one morning, she woke up feeling sick. She threw up everything she ate. Her body felt weak. Maybe it's just malaria, I told her. But she shook her head. David, I think I should take a test. I didn't argue. We had taken pregnancy tests hundreds of times before, and they were always negative. I didn't want to get my hopes up. She went into the bathroom while I waited outside. Minutes passed. Then I heard her scream, David, David, come. I ran inside. She was holding the test in her shaking hands. 2 bold red lines stared back at me. Positive. She was pregnant. We cried together. After 5 long years, our prayers had been answered. But we didn't know that this child was coming with something different. The pregnancy was smooth. No complications, no sickness, nothing. Ada glowed with happiness. Then on the night she went into labor, the rain started. It poured for 2 days straight. Non-stop. Lightning flashed. Thunder roared. The streets flooded. It was as if the heavens were shaking. I didn't care. I rushed Ada to the hospital. The moment she started pushing, the hospital lights flickered. Then, suddenly, blackout. Doctor, what's happening? I shouted. The generator is down, a nurse yelled. Fix it. They scrambled around in the dark, using only phone flashlights. The room was hot and chaotic. Ada screamed in pain. The doctors worked blindly. Then, just as suddenly as the lights had gone out, they came back on. The baby is out, someone shouted. Silence. No crying. The doctor's face was pale. He bent over the baby, checking for signs of life. My heart pounded. Doctor, is my child alive? I whispered. Minutes passed. Then, finally, the baby took a slow, shaky breath. The doctor sighed in relief. She's alive. Ada and I cried. Our baby was here. But she didn't cry. Not for 2 hours. We took her home the next day. We named her Chisholm, meaning God is with me. But from the very beginning, I noticed something strange. The night we brought her home, Ada's family house almost caught fire. The neighbors put it out before it could spread. A week later, the security cameras in my mansion stopped working. The electrician checked them. There's no reason for this to happen, he said, confused. Then came the biggest sign. Ada tried breastfeeding her, but Chisholm refused to suck. Maybe she's not hungry, I said. But days passed. Chisholm still wouldn't drink breast milk. No baby can survive without breast milk, Ada worried. We tried formula. She barely drank. She also didn't poop often. Maybe once in 2 days. Ada was scared. She told her mother, her sisters, her friends. It's normal, they all said. Some babies are just like that. But Ada didn't believe them. And deep down, neither did I. Chisholm grew, but something about her never felt right. She rarely smiled. She rarely cried. Most babies laugh when you tickle them. Not her. She would just stare. People started avoiding her. My own mother stopped visiting. "David, this child is not normal," she whispered to me one day. "Mama, what are you saying?" "I don't know, but be careful." I brushed it off. Then one day, I saw something that made my blood run cold. I walked into Chisholm's room at night to check on her. She was standing by the window. She was only 6 months old. A 6-month-old baby should not be able to stand by herself. But there she was, standing, staring outside. When I called her name, she turned and smiled. For the first time in her life. And that smile didn't feel like a child's smile. It felt wrong. I stepped back. And for the first time, I felt something I had never felt before when looking at my own daughter. Fear. It was hard to shake off that feeling I had when Chisholm smiled at me that night. I couldn't sleep, and I kept replaying the image of her standing by the window, staring out with that unsettling grin. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her tiny face. I tried to tell myself I was just overthinking things. Babies don't do that, right? Maybe it was just a coincidence. But deep inside, I knew something wasn't right. Ada and I had long talks about Chisholm's behavior, but she kept telling me that everything was fine. "She's just a baby, David. Don't worry too much. She's healthy." But I couldn't ignore the nagging feeling that something was wrong. As the weeks passed, Chisholm's odd behavior only became more pronounced. One morning, Ada tried breastfeeding again, but Chisholm refused. She would push away her mother's breast and cry, but it wasn't the usual hungry cry. It was almost like she was angry. Ada looked at me, tears in her eyes. "David, I don't know what's happening. Why won't she eat? Why is she so angry all the times?" I didn't know how to comfort her. I felt helpless. We tried giving her bottles, but Chisholm barely drank. And when she did drink, it was as if she was forcing herself to swallow. It didn't feel right. I remember one night, Ada stayed up all night, holding Chisholm and rocking her, trying to make her sleep. But the baby just stared at her mother, her eyes wide open, unblinking. I felt a chill run down my spine. It was as if Chisholm was studying Ada, reading her every move. "You should get some rest," I said to Ada, but she shook her head. "I don't think she's okay, David. I know something's wrong." By the time Chisholm turned 6, her behavior became more difficult to manage. The teachers at her school started sending notes home about her mischievous behavior. Every day, there was a new report of her causing trouble. "Chisholm doesn't listen in class. She distracts the other kids. She refuses to do her homework. She gets into fights with the other children for no reason." The worst part was that she had no remorse. When she was caught doing something wrong, she would simply smile. Not the innocent smile of a child, but something that made everyone uncomfortable. I started talking to Ada about it. "Maybe we need to take her to see a specialist. There has to be an explanation for all of this." But Ada refused. "She's just a child, David. All kids go through difficult phases. Let's give her time. She's not a bad child." But as much as I wanted to believe that, I couldn't ignore the fact that it seemed like every day, Chisholm became harder to handle. Her teachers complained even more. She started staying home from school for no reason, refusing to talk to anyone and barely interacting with the family. I watched my daughter grow more distant, and I began to fear the person she was becoming. One night, after yet another complaint from Chisholm's school, I couldn't take it anymore. I sat down with Ada and said, "We need help, Ada. I've tried everything, but nothing is working. Maybe we need to go to church. Maybe God can help us understand what's happening." Ada wasn't convinced. "David, it's just a phase. She's fine." But I could see the doubt in her eyes. She was just as scared as I was. We went to church that Sunday. The pastor prayed for us, asking God to bless our family and to give us understanding about Chisholm's behavior. He told us to have faith, that everything would work out. But when we left the church, nothing had changed. Chisholm still refused to listen to us. The teachers continued to complain. My heart sank as I realized we were running out of options. One of Ada's friends suggested we visit a traditional healer. "There are people who can help with these kinds of things," she said. "Maybe there's something wrong with her spiritually." I didn't believe in these things, but I was desperate. So I agreed. We made the trip to see the traditionalist, an old man who lived on the outskirts of the city. He told us to bring certain items, things we couldn't get anywhere in the city. He gave us instructions on what we needed to do, and we followed them. But when we returned, things only got worse. Chisholm became even more aggressive. She started breaking things around the house, throwing tantrums for no reason. Her eyes would flash with anger, and she would scream at us to leave her alone. We tried to comfort her, but nothing worked. She was becoming someone else, someone unrecognizable. One night, after everything seemed to fall apart, I went to bed feeling completely lost. As I closed my eyes, sleep came quickly, but it was not peaceful. In my dream, I saw a woman I hadn't seen in years. Her name was Amara. Amara had been a part of my life when I was younger. She was the woman I loved before I became rich. We had promised each other that we would marry when things got better. But when I finally made money, I broke that promise. I left her, and I moved on with my life. In the dream, Amara was angry. She was holding a red cloth, and she looked at me with hatred. "You broke your promise to me," she said. "You will never have peace with your family. You will have a child, but that child will bring you nothing but pain." I woke up in a cold sweat, the words from my dream echoing in my mind. My heart raced. Was this the answer? Had Amara cursed me? I immediately told Ada about the dream. "It's not just her behavior, Ada," I said. "It's me. I think I've done something terrible, and now we're paying for it." Ada was silent for a long time. Finally, she spoke. "What should we do, David? How do we fix this?" I didn't know. But I knew one thing. I had to find Amara, apologize, and make things right. It wasn't going to be easy, but it was the only way I could see to save my family. The weight of my dream hung heavily on me, like a dark cloud that refused to lift. I couldn't shake the vision of Amara, her angry eyes, and her curse. The dream felt so real, almost as if it was happening in the waking world. I could see her holding that red cloth, hear her voice ringing in my ears. I knew I had to make things right. I had to find Amara and ask for her forgiveness. But where was she? I'd lost track of Amara long ago after I moved on from our relationship. She'd gone silent after I broke her heart. I didn't think about her anymore. At that time, I had been so focused on building my wealth, on making something of myself, that I couldn't have cared less about the woman I left behind. Now, the consequences of my actions were staring me in the face. The next morning, Ada and I sat down to talk. She had listened quietly as I explained my dream. She hadn't said much, but I could tell she was worried. "David, what do you want to do now?" she asked. I could see the concern in her eyes. I could also feel her pain. I knew she wanted this nightmare to end, just as much as I did. But we were both stuck in a situation we couldn't control. "I have to find Amara," I said, feeling a sense of determination rise in my chest. "It's the only way to fix this. I know I've done wrong, and I need her to forgive me." Ada nodded slowly. "But how? We've lost contact with her for years. We don't even know where she lives." I thought for a moment. Amara had always been proud, never wanting to rely on anyone. She wasn't the type to ask for help. But I had money now, and I had power. I could use that to track her down. "I'll pay anyone who can help me find her," I said firmly. "I'll offer a reward, and they'll find her for us." Ada looked at me with a mixture of fear and hope. "If you think it will help, David." I could see that she was struggling with the idea, but she trusted me. She trusted that I would do whatever it took to make things right. I wasted no time. I began to spread the word about Amara, offering a generous reward to anyone who could find her. I contacted old friends, acquaintances, and even hired a private investigator. I used every resource I had at my disposal, throwing money at the problem, hoping it would lead me to her. Days turned into weeks, and I began to lose hope. No one seemed to know where Amara had gone. I started to fear that I would never find her, that the damage I had caused was irreversible. Then, one afternoon, my phone rang. It was an unknown number, but I picked it up anyway. "Hello," I answered. my heart pounding in my chest. "Is this David Nwachukwu?" a voice asked, the words coming quickly. "Yes, it is." "Who is this?" I asked, my voice shaky. "We found her," the voice replied. "We found Amara." A rush of relief and excitement flooded my body.
"Where is she?"
"Where can I find her?" I almost shouted into the phone. "She's living in a small village outside the city," the voice explained. "But she's not exactly easy to approach. She doesn't want to see you." The words hit me like a slap. She doesn't want to see me? That's what we were told. But we have an address. If you really want to meet her, you'll have to go yourself. I didn't hesitate. I knew this was my chance. I thanked the person on the other end of the line, hung up, and told Ada what had just happened. Her eyes widened in shock, but she didn't stop me. She knew this was something I had to do. "Please be careful, David," Ada said, her voice soft but filled with concern. "I will," I promised. "I just need to fix this. For all of us." It took several hours to get to the village, but I didn't mind. I was determined to face Amara and make things right. My mind raced with thoughts of what I would say to her. How could I apologize for everything I had done? How could I undo the hurt I had caused her? When I finally arrived at the small house, I was struck by how quiet everything was. There was no sign of life, no sounds of children playing or people talking. It was like the whole village was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. I knocked on the door, my heart pounding in my chest. A few moments later, the door creaked open, and there she stood, Amara. She hadn't changed much. Her face was still beautiful, though there was a hardness in her eyes that I didn't remember. The years had not been kind to her, and I could see the weight of life's struggles in her expression. She looked at me with cold, unforgiving eyes. "Amara," I whispered, my voice trembling. "It's me, David. I've come to beg for your forgiveness." She didn't say anything at first. She just stared at me, her eyes filled with so much anger. Then, slowly, she stepped aside and motioned for me to come in. Inside her small home, I sat down, my hands shaking as I spoke. "I know I've hurt you, Amara. I know I broke my promise, and I know that I caused you pain. I've thought about it every day. I was selfish, and I didn't appreciate you like I should have.
"I'm sorry."
Please forgive me." Amara was silent, her eyes locked on me. After what felt like an eternity, she spoke. "You left me, David," she said quietly. "You promised me you would marry me. You said we would be together. But when you got what you wanted, when you became rich, you forgot about me. You left me behind like I was nothing." "I'm sorry," I repeated, my voice cracking. "I was wrong, and I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I need it. For my family's sake. For my daughter's sake." Amara's eyes softened slightly, but there was still a trace of anger in her voice. "You left me broken, David. You shattered my heart, and I swore that if you ever had a child, that child would bring you pain." I felt a cold shiver run down my spine. "I know," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "And I've suffered because of it. My daughter, she's been a constant source of trouble. And I know it's my fault. Please, Amara, I beg you, undo the curse. Please, for the sake of my family." Amara stared at me for a long time, and I thought she would turn me away. But then, slowly, she stood up. "I will forgive you, David.
But not because you want me to.
I will forgive you because you are truly sorry, and because you have suffered as much as I have." I couldn't believe it. My heart leapt with relief. "Thank you, Amara. Thank you for forgiving me." The moment Amara forgave me, I felt an overwhelming sense of peace wash over me. It was as if a heavy weight had been lifted from my chest. I knew that everything would be okay now. When I returned home to Ada, I told her everything. We prayed together, asking for God's blessing and for Amara's forgiveness to bring peace to our family. That night, Chisholm slept soundly for the first time in months. She didn't wake up crying and she didn't act out. The next day, things began to change. Chisholm became calmer. She started behaving better at school, and the teachers no longer complained. She even began to bond with us again, laughing and playing like a normal child. It felt like a miracle. I knew that Amara's forgiveness had lifted the curse and brought peace to our family. As the weeks passed, Chisholm became the joyful, loving daughter we had always hoped for. Chisholm grew up to be a kind, well-behaved young girl. She excelled in school, and at her primary school graduation, she received an award for being the best student and the best-behaved student in her class. I couldn't have been prouder. As for Amara, she found love again. She married that same year, and I sent her a heartfelt letter thanking her for everything she had done for us. I knew that without her forgiveness, we wouldn't have been able to move forward. Life returned to normal, and the family lived happily ever after. The pain from the past was healed, and we finally had the peace we had longed for. That brings us to the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching.